After a toxic cycle of self-destruction and survival, the Velvet Underground's Nico was finally trying to pull her life together, until the most shocking and unexpected twist ended everything in an instant. Born Christa Päffgen, she became Nico, a model, actress, and singer who left a mark on everyone she met. She walked runways and flickered through arthouse reels before her haunting voice bled into Velvet Underground tracks. Nico wasn't just the face of an era, she was its ghost in eyeliner. The world called her name, but she grew up too fast answering it. Nico was born in 1938 in Cologne to a Catholic brewery heir and a Protestant mother from working class roots. As such, her life began at a crossroads of class, faith, and a fractured nation. And just a year later, the world plunged into global conflict, casting a long shadow over the girl who would become a legend. For Nico and her family, the dark days were only beginning. When she was just 2, Nico's life took a dramatic turn. As Cologne fell under relentless Allied bombardment during World War II, her mother and grandfather whisked her away to safety. Their destination? The eerie, swampy, Spreewald forest outside of Berlin. It was a haunting refuge that mirrored the chaos they left behind. But the odd calm of the woods would leave a mark on Nico that never quite faded. The Wehrmacht drafted Nico's father in 1939, but what followed remains murky. One account claims a French sniper wounded him in 1942, and his commanding officer ended his suffering. Others say he endured brain damage and spent his remaining years in an asylum. Some whisper he vanished in a camp. No one knows for sure, but the mystery haunted Nico for life. In 1946, Nico and her mother moved to Berlin, where her mother found work as a seamstress. Nico enrolled in school, but didn't stick around for long. By the time she was 13, she had walked away from the classroom for good, already drifting toward a life far removed from textbooks and timetables. By her teens, Nico was working at Berlin's elite department store, but she wasn't built to blend in. With icy pale skin, sculptured features, and a statuesque 5'10" frame, she turned heads wherever she went. It wasn't long before one of those heads belonged to someone with a camera, and an eye for something extraordinary. The real question was whether Nico saw it too. At 16, Nico's life changed with a single glance. While working at a fashion show, she caught the eye of photographer Herbert Tobias. Struck by her stark beauty and magnetic aura, he took her under his wing, and just like that, Nico was no longer wearing the clothes. She was becoming the face of fashion. But Nico would still need to choose whether to wield the power she possessed or not. Tobias didn't just launch her modeling career, he gave her a new name. He christened her Nico. The name stuck, and from that moment on, Christa Päffgen slipped into the shadows, and Nico emerged in her place, stepping into the spotlight with full force and never looking back. At 17, Nico moved to Paris and quickly became a rising star in the fashion world, posing for Vogue, Elle, Tempo, and more. Coco Chanel even hired her to promote the brand. But true to form, Nico wasn't one to be boxed in by a job or bound by a contract. She followed only her rhythm. She bolted to New York City, leaving the Chanel deal and expectations behind. Around this time, Nico ditched her natural brown hair for a striking blonde look, later claiming Ernest Hemingway inspired the change. As she drifted from city to city, she picked up more than gigs. She taught herself English, Spanish, and French. With her cinematic looks and growing mystique, it wouldn't be long before the camera found her again, and this time on the silver screen. In 1959, Nico slipped into film with a blink and you'll miss it role in Mario Lanza's final movie for the first time. That same year, Fellini spotted her on a set and cast her as herself. Mysterious, magnetic, unforgettable. By then, she was living in New York, sharpening her craft under the legendary Lee Strasberg. The screen was calling. After landing a role in 1961, Nico's face turned up somewhere unexpected. on the dreamy cover of Bill Evans's 1962 jazz album, Moonbeams. Cool, distant, and captivating, she was becoming less of a model and more of a mood. And soon she'd be more than just a face, she'd be a voice. Over the next few years, Nico split her time between New York and Paris. Despite constantly moving, she landed the 1963 film Striptease. She even recorded the title track written by Serge Gainsbourg, but it vanished for decades, only resurfacing in 2001. Even so, her voice was beginning to echo. While in New York, Nico finally met Greek filmmaker Nico Papatakis, the man whose name she'd already claimed as her own. The two lived together from 1951 to 1961, and Papatakis first saw a new path for her. After hearing her sing around the apartment, he urged her to take it seriously and signed her up for lessons. A voice was awakening, and soon, so was a new chapter in her life. On August 11th, 1962, Nico gave birth to her son, Ari, as she called him. She lived with Papatakis then, but claimed the father was French icon Alain Delon, who ultimately denied it. Unable to care for Ari, she left him with Delon's mother and stepfather. With motherhood behind her, Nico drifted further into musical circles, including those of the Rolling Stones. In 1965, Nico crossed paths with the Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones, pulling her straight into London's electric rock scene. That year, she recorded her debut single, I'm Not Saying, with The Last Mile on the B-side, produced by a young Jimmy Page. Nico's voice had found its edge, and soon, 1965 would force her into a choice that left a mark. In 1965, during a brief but intense affair with Brian Jones, Nico became pregnant. She made a decision that weighed heavily on her for years to come. She chose to have an abortion. In its aftermath, she felt a pull towards something more permanent and personal, prompting her to reconnect with her son, Ari. But just as she looked inward, fate introduced her to the voice of a generation. In the summer of 1965, Nico was introduced to the voice of a generation, Bob Dylan, in Paris. The connection struck. 2 years later, she recorded Dylan's bittersweet ballad, I'll Keep It With Mine, for her debut album, Chelsea Girl, giving Dylan's words a cool, haunting new edge. Soon, Nico would meet another icon. Introduced by Brian Jones, Nico entered the orbit of Andy Warhol and Paul Morrissey in New York. She starred in their films, including Chelsea Girls, The Closet, Sunset, and Imitation of Christ. Nico wasn't just watching the underground scene, she was shaping it, and Warhol had even more in store for her. When Andy Warhol took over managing the Velvet Underground, he had a bold idea. Add Nico as the band's chanteuse. The group wasn't thrilled. Her icy presence clashed with their gritty edge, and tensions flared musically and personally. Still, they agreed. Warhol saw what they couldn't yet, the spark of a legend. Whether Nico could win them over remained to be seen. The Velvet Underground became the pulsing core of Andy Warhol's exploding plastic inevitable, a psychedelic spectacle of sound, film, strobe lights, and dancers. Nico took the mic for 3 songs, her detached, hypnotic voice adding a strange beauty to the chaos. The underground had found its queen, and she was unlike anyone else. Her voice left an unforgettable mark on the Velvet Underground's 1967 debut album, The Velvet Underground and Nico. She sang lead on many tracks. Her detached, haunting delivery gave the record its spectral edge, a sound that would echo for decades. But inside the band, things were far from harmonious. Reviewer Richard Goldstein once described Nico as half goddess, half icicle, capturing the cold allure that defined her. He wrote her vocals with the Velvet Underground sound like a cello getting up in the morning, slow, low, and strangely beautiful. It wasn't just the singing that made her a spectacle, it was the rock atmosphere she created in the background. Nico's time at the Velvet Underground was anything but smooth. Behind the scenes, tensions simmered. John Cale recalled her lengthy pre-show rituals, burning a candle, getting ready on her own time, often delaying performances. Lou Reed, never one for patience, grew especially irritated. On stage, they made magic, but offstage, the fuse was burning. Nico's partial deafness sometimes led her off-key, earning cruel jabs from her bandmates. But what they mocked helped shape a sound like no other. Though the Velvet Underground and Nico flopped at first, history had other plans. It's now hailed as a classic, landing at number 13 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. The future was finally listening. Nico stepped into the spotlight alone after parting ways with the Velvet Underground. She began performing solo at the Dome in New York City, trading the band's chaos for something darker and more intimate. Backed by a rotating cast, Velvet alums, folk icons alike Tim Hardin and Tim Buckley, and a young Jackson Browne, Nico's haunting voice remained the one unshakable presence. For her 1967 debut album Chelsea Girl, Nico assembled an all-star lineup of songwriters, Bob Dylan, Tim Hardin, and Jackson Browne, and borrowed talent from her Velvet Underground days. Lou Reed, John Cale, and Sterling Morrison contributed, with Nico co-writing. It was a pleasure then, alongside Reed and Cale. The result was haunting, elegant, and unmistakably her. Chelsea Girl may have sounded delicate and refined, with lush strings and fluttering flutes arranged by producer Tom Wilson, but Nico hated it. Stripped of creative control, she later said, "Everything I wanted for that record, they took it away. No drums, no extra guitars, no simplicity. The first time I heard the album, I cried," she said, all because of the flute. Inspired by Jim Morrison, Nico wrote The Marble Index, a bleak, beautiful 1968 album that redefined her sound and image. With her droning harmonium, John Cale's icy arrangements, and a stark new look, red hair dressed in all black, Nico shed her past and shaped a gothic future. The harmonium became her voice, the darkness her signature. Now she would decide where to sign. In the early 1970s, Nico returned to the stage, haunting audiences in Amsterdam and London with her harmonium. She and John Cale even opened for Pink Floyd, an unlikely pairing, but unforgettable. In 1972, Paris witnessed a rare flash of Velvet Underground magic. Nico, Cale, and Lou Reed reunited for a one-night-only show, and the ghosts of the past weren't done yet. Nico released 2 more solo albums in the 1970s. John Cale produced both records and played most instruments. Between 1970 and 1979, Nico appeared in around 7 films by French director Philippe Guéral, blending seamlessly into his dreamlike experimental world. The two met in 1969, and she contributed her song The Falconer to one of his films. Before long, Nico moved in with him and became a muse, not just on screen, but in every corner of his life. She still had more to give. In 1974, Nico opened for Tangerine Dream in Reims Cathedral, a setting as haunting as her sound. She soon partnered with Berlin guitarist Lutz Ulbrich, who joined her on stage through the late 70s. She returned to her natural brown hair, kept her all-black look, and clashed with Island Records, which dropped her in 1975. Alone again, Nico leaned deeper into the shadows where darker parts of her story waited. Nico's legacy carries troubling contradictions. Journalist Danny Fields described her as having disturbing views, recalling moments when she made anti-Semitic remarks. Others, like co-manager Nigel Bagley, said they never saw such behavior. Fields alleged that in the early 70s, Nico injured a mixed-race woman at the Chelsea Hotel while shouting slurs and making inflammatory remarks in interviews, prompting Island Records to cut ties. She later attributed her views to a traumatic assault at age 13 by a black American soldier, a claim partially supported by personal documents. Biographer Richard Witts also noted her habit of calling women poison, revealing a sharp, misanthropic streak woven into her complex persona. In 1979, Nico made a New York comeback with a well-reviewed CBGB show, joined by John Cale and Lutz Ulbrich. She played regularly at Squat Theatre with Jim Tisdall, At some gigs, punk legend Cheetah Chrome joined her on guitar, proof that Nico still drew unexpected company. After relocating to Manchester in the early 1980s, Nico found a new bass and a new manager in Factory Records promoter Alan Wise. She began performing live with a string of backing bands. Her sound kept shifting, but one thing was clear: Nico was never far from finished. In the early 80s, Nico took a bold turn. Her 1981 album Drama of Exile fused rock with hypnotic Middle Eastern textures. In 1985, she recorded her final album with John Cale. In her final years, Nico toured across Europe, Japan, and Australia, her stage presence still magnetic. In 1988, she debuted new songs in Berlin, closing with the chilling You Forgot to Answer, but her voice had one last recording left. After a month before she passed, Nico recorded her final studio track, a haunting duet with Mark Almond titled Your Kisses Burn. It was released on Almond's album The Stars We Are. Her last live performance, the 1988 Berlin Planetarium show, was later released as Nico's last concert. Nico battled substance abuse addiction for over 15 years, a struggle that shaped her later life. Bandmate James Young recalled her chaotic, often overwhelming behavior in his memoir, Songs They Never Play, on the radio. Punk guitarist Cheetah Chrome described their strained, addiction-fueled relationship in the 80s. Nico claims she only began using in the 1970s during her intense relationship with filmmaker Philippe. And all things considered, the vice proved not the thing that finally took her out. In her final years, Nico lived in the areas of Greater Manchester. She began treatment and focused on eating well. Though addiction still loomed, she started reconnecting with music, quietly rebuilding the spark that had once defined her. But just as life seemed to steady, fate took a sharp turn. Nico's relationship with her son Ari had been fraught since she left him with her ex-lover Alain Delon's parents when she realized she couldn't care for a child. Over the years, they had reconnected and strengthened their bond, and Nico's newfound focus on her health had likely helped them heal. In July of 1988, Nico traveled to the Spanish island of Ibiza with Ari for a much-needed vacation. Late one morning on the trip, Nico told her son she wanted to go into town to buy some Mary Jane. She wrapped a black scarf on her head and set out on her errand on a bicycle early that afternoon. But she never made it home. While on the ride, Nico fell off the bike and hit her head. A taxi driver found her unconscious on the side of the road and tried to take her to local hospitals, but kept getting turned away. Doctors diagnosed Nico with heart stroke, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Nico died at 8 p.m. that night from her head injuries, which hadn't been properly treated or addressed with any urgency from doctors. X-rays later revealed a massive cerebral hemorrhage. Her ashes were buried in her mother's plot in Berlin. Nico's influence cut deep, especially in the gothic and alternative scenes. Nico's legacy echoed through the artists she inspired. Peter Hook of Joy Division and New Order named Chelsea Girl a favorite. Elliott Smith covered Chelsea Girls and These Days, calling the Marble Index perfect for a 2:45 a.m. listening. Mark Almond covered The Falconer, calling Nico a school-age obsession. Several artists have explored Nico's complexity. James Young's Songs They Never Play on the Radio, 1992, recounts her final years. Richard Witz's 1993 biography, Nico, The Life and Lies of an Icon, offers a complete career overview. The 1995 documentary Nico Icon features insights from Reed and Cale, while Lutz Ulbricht's 2015 memoir, In the Shadow of the Moon, Goddess, captures their time together in the 70s. Nico's life was a haunting melody, one that drifted between beauty and chaos, brilliance and darkness. She inspired, disturbed, and mystified in equal measure, leaving behind a sound and a presence that still echo through music today. Though her story ended suddenly on a roadside, Nico never truly disappeared. Her voice, her vision, her ghost and eyeliner, they still linger, reminding us that legends don't die, they just fade into myth. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.